So here we have the TMTA 2024 Algebra 2 contest. And this is the first question. You do have access to a calculator if you can't do basic math, which is why I think they kind of put it here, because maybe you've never seen a bracket. So I'm just combining like terms here. And brackets are essentially parentheses. That's all they are. You might be thinking about interval notation, but they're essentially parentheses. We call them master brackets. That's what they're called. They're saying do all this stuff, okay? It's all together. But you can basically just think of them as a set of parentheses, all they are. So anyways, I'm just cranking out some math here. -8 negative times -3 is positive 24. You know, I squared the 2. I'm going to have 27 minus 96, and that's going to be -69. Now, you could have also typed that in your calculator. If I can type, doesn't look like I can. So I'll use a master parentheses instead of a bracket. And I'll press that magic enter key and I'll get -69. All right, Eli wants to take an advanced mathematics course his senior year. To do so, he needs at least a 93 average on a series of 5 tests. His scores on the first 4 tests were 89, 96, 87, 98. What is the lowest score that he needs on test 5 to obtain at least a 93 average on the 5 tests? So algebraically, if you do algebra, we would say that 93 must equal, there's going to be 5 tests, right? If you want to find the average of 5 things, you're going to divide by 5. 89 plus 96 plus 87 plus 98 plus some unknown x. All right, so I'm going to 5 both sides to clear that fraction. 5 times 93 is going to be 465. Let's put some numbers here together and make sure I'm right this morning. We got an 89 plus a 96 plus an 87 plus a 98. 370. And then plus x. And then all we have to do is subtract 370. And we would get 95. Now, you know, that's algebra. Here's the truth. Most of you guys know how to do math. And I would just go in and put the stuff in a list. I'd go to Stat Edit, clear, put in your 4 scores, and then use the answer choices they give you. I mean, you are holding this tool. You may as well use it. So it turns out that A was 95, which is the correct answer. So I'm putting a 95 in for the 5th test. Stat, calc, 1 variable statistics. Scroll on down to calculate. And there you go. We got the 93 average we were looking for. Had that said anything other than 93, well, that wouldn't have been it. All right, what value of t rounded to the nearest hundred satisfies the equation 3e to the -2t is 175. So part of the goal here is to do everything old school and anything I can, show you how to use a calculator. So we'll divide out the 3 first. Well, 175, enter that. 3 is not divisible by 175. So e to the -2t equals 175 thirds. Maybe a decimal. And then what we're just going to do is we're going to do log is bay. Remember old log is bay? It's crazy how, you know, we did this for a solid month, and like Brody Taylor the other day didn't recognize that he needed to use it because he wasn't told to. Like, you got to catch on why you can do things. So we're going to have a logarithm whose base is that e, because this is my base, this is my exponent, all that good stuff. That's my argument. Whose argument is 175 thirds, and it equals -2t. Of course, that's an ln. And we're going to divide out that -2, and that's going to give us our t value. So let's see what that t-value is. You know, that didn't take me too long to do, so I went ahead and did it the old-fashioned way. But you are holding a TI-84. You are, don't forget that, because the next thing is obvious here. So there's my correct answer. It's going to be choice A. The obvious thing was to go to y equals and type the blasted equation in. The second e to the negative 2t, we don't have a t key, is equal to, I forgot the 2, didn't I? Phooey. If you're going to use y equals, don't do any math at all. That's a 3. That equals 175. Now we'll do a zoom 6. Now I have still got, looks like I've got some stuff on here. Like I've probably got stat plots on. Yeah, I do. Now we put 175 in y2. So we're going to have to look up 200 units. But if I chose you to go this math contest, you understand that. You have a pulse and a brain. And there's our intersection. And you can even look down at the x-axis. It's around -2. So it's choice D, just like the calculator told me a minute ago. Right there. What are all the zeros of this polynomial? And again, let's do this old school. You could even plug numbers in if you wanted to. It's not a hard one. It does have 3 zeros. You know, they're only listing 2. That means one of these has been repeated. There is a repeated 0. Because it should have 3. It has 3 zeros. So one of those happened twice. This is a factoring by grouping problem. Notice I can pull an x squared, and there's your repeated 0. It's going to be a 0. Probably, I don't know, we'll see. If I pull an x squared from x cubed minus 2x squared, I'm going to have x minus 2. I can pull a 4 from the back of the bus. It's going to give me x minus 2. Okay, so it's a 2 that's repeated. If I think about the common factor of x minus 2 and then the stuff that's left over, x squared minus 4, I know that x squared minus 4 factors is x minus 2 and x plus 2. And of course, we know about the ZPP, the zero product property. So I've got 2 and -2. It's right there. And on a graph, and it's worth talking about, the graph would have shown us these same zeros. You're going to have to remember that a cross happens at least once and a touch happens at least twice. I don't know where my voice is this morning. I'm sorry. So anyways, I typed into y equals, and you can see right here where I'm touching, that's a crossing. So x equals -2, that happens once. And that's a touch, x equals +2 is happening twice. So hence the 3 zeros. All right, this problem, like this is so easy. What is f minus g of 2? There's a half dozen ways of doing this, but what it means basically is find f of 2 minus g of 2. That's all it means you do. So let's do f of 2. It is 2 times a 2 squared minus a 3. And then you crank out the math here. 2 squared is 4 times 2 is 8 minus 3 is 5. We need g of 2, which is 3 times a 2, add a 7. That's going to be 6 plus 7, which is 13. So the task is to find 5 minus 13, and that'll give us -8. What else could we have done? I guess if we wanted to be super lazy, we could have gone to our TI-84. We could have taken a 2 and stored it to x. You got to be careful when you type this in, but this is function f. It is 2x to the second minus 3. And remember, we always wrap before we subtract. So minus 3x plus 7. There you go, -8 either way. So You ought to get the first 5 questions right on this thing. High school is planning on putting on a musical performance. There are 18 singers auditioning for the musical, and the director is looking for 2 singers for duet. What is the probability that Alicia and Juan are the 2 singers selected? So we have a probability problem, which I may not have talked to by the time you take this test. I should have done this kind of stuff. All right, so there's a proper way of doing this and there's a non-proper way of doing this. And we're probably going to approach this from the non-proper way. And then I'm going to pause it and make sure that it works. But my first instinct tells me that the probability of Alicia and Yuan is going to be the probability of Alicia times the probability of Juan. Now, order doesn't matter. It can be either one of these two. We can also do the probability of Juan and Alicia. And that's the probability of Juan plus, or sorry, not plus, times the probability of Alicia. And if I had 10 minutes, I would explain why this works the way it does. It's not an example that I want to write what you call a sample space on. Because sample spaces take up a lot of time and a lot of space. So the probability of Alicia getting picked would be 1 in 18, but Alicia has been picked and there are now 17 people. So Juan would be 1 in 17. If we reverse the order, we still have 1/18 times 1/17. Now, the probability of both is actually, because that's what it's going to be, the probability of both is going to be the probability of A and J plus the probability of J and A. So I'm going to have to add those two things together. So let's see what 1/18 plus 1/7 times 1/17 is. 1/18 times 1/17 is that. And I need to add it to itself. See, they're expecting kids to get that as their answer and stop. I'm a standardized test maker. They expect kids to get that and stop. And there you go. It's 0.0065. So what number was that? That was number 6. Come on. 6, algebra 2, they picked E. So yes, I agree with the test maker. A lot of teachers teach this with combinations, which is a good way of doing it. I just like old school stuff. What is the leading term of P of x equals negative x cubed plus 2x plus 1 squared times 3x minus 5? There's a lot of ways of doing this. If a kid understands end behavior, there's a lot they can do. Let me say that. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some what I call near algebra. It's not correct, but it works. Each one of these factors can kind of come up with something. This factor generates a negative x cubed. If I apply the square piece, this becomes 2, sorry, not 2. If I square 2x, I get 4x squared. So times 4x squared. And then this piece generates a 3x, so times 3x. So 4 times 3 is 12, it's negative. And if we add our exponents, 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 1 is 6. That's the correct one. Now, the leading term determines end behavior. All right, it determines end behavior. And I don't know how much this will narrow things down for me, but let's take a look and see. Negative x to the third, because, you know, some kids just have test anxiety and you go stupid and you just forget things. I don't understand it. I kind of remember having a little test anxiety, but it wasn't ever bad, and I learned how to deal with it, and I learned that it was actually for my own benefit that I was having test anxiety because it was speeding me up. And anyways, do a zoom 6 like you were taught. This is what the original graph looks like. And the correct choice will be the closest. On end behavior. So notice how this thing is falling around -1 and falling at close to 2. So they had a fairly good number. I mean, obviously it ain't the odd. Let's see what negative x to the 6 looks like. It's not bad. It's really not. I don't even know if this is a good idea to show, because we'll just see. Here's negative 12. This is probably a horrible idea trying to show you use a calculator, but you could have thrown away choice C. There's the original. This one ought to be a little bit more constrained. It should be on the inside if I'm thinking right. Yeah, it reaches that one pretty good. Yeah, that's probably a bad way of showing you things. Never mind that. If theta is a second quadrant angle, with the sine of theta being 6/11, what is the value of the tangent of theta? So a couple things come into play here. One of them is this whole guy, SOHCAHTOA. You know it, you love it, you need it. And you guys have not had trig yet. You've had some geometry trig, and that's all you've had. So you have not seen a problem like this. But the second quadrant is going to be this quadrant right here. Now, this is a big deal because some kids don't do things right. When you draw a triangle on the XY axis, the Cartesian plane, the right angle is always formed with the x-axis if you're doing trig. Let me specify that for trig. That's how we do it. There's no why. That's because that's how the actual language is defined. It's the way it works. There's so much going on, and the right angle has to be there for everything that's taught in trigonometry to make a lick of sense. So theta, and again, I haven't had a chance to teach y'all trig. Theta is the rotation from the positive x-axis to this. That's theta. We use something called a reference angle, and a reference angle is the angle formed with the nearest x-axis, and we call it theta prime. We're going to use theta prime. Reference angles and their original angle, they have the same exact trig ratios, and I know that the sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so this is O over H. Opposite is 6, hypotenuse is 11. I've got a really old theorem called a squared plus b squared equals c squared that'll give me the missing leg, so 6 squared plus something squared is 11 squared, and 6 squared is 36, 11 squared is 121, 121 minus 36 is 85, a squared is 85, so a is root 85. Now, direction matters. A hypotenuse is always positive, okay? Hypotenuses are actually a concept we call magnitude, but hypotenuse is always positive. And the rest of it depends on direction. This is running left. It is literally running left. All right, I want tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite of theta prime is a 6, and adjacent is a negative root 85. Now the test maker here didn't even bother cleaning this up. They should have wrote negative 6 roots 85 over 85, but they didn't, so whatever. Who am I to judge? It's made by a UTA, it's made by a college professor who does not know what the standards in the state of Tennessee in Algebra 2 are. He does not know them, or she, they do not know them. What value of x satisfies the equation? Oh, Lord, it's easy. Well, you shouldn't miss this. Now, brackets are essentially parentheses. Let's see, what do we have here? We have 4x plus 2. 4x plus 4x is 8x. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. This equals 7 minus 7x. We'll have negative 24x plus 3 equals 7 minus 7x. I'm going to shift my x's over this way. Negative 7 and 24 should make 17. And 3 minus 7 should be negative 4. Divide out the 17 and you're in business. Negative 4/17. Now, of course, you could have done this in y equals too. Like, you could have. Y equals is your best friend. Y equals will get at least half this test correct, which will not get you in the top 10 because, well, other kids know how to use Y equals too, now don't they? And a lot of the kids have only been shown Y equals a handful of times, unlike you. A lot of teachers don't show how to use Y equals until right before the end of course test because they don't want you using it. That's just the reality of it. Anyway, Zoom 6, as you were trained, we do have an intersection, second trace 5, enter, 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 and it's that funky decimal right there, negative 0.2353. So see it, negative 0.2353. And if I take negative 4 over 17, which I think is the right answer, there it is. Moving forward to the nearest tenth, what is the distance between the x-intercept and the y-intercept of this equation? All right, so I'm going to do this old school. The x-intercept happens when y equals 0. So 0 equals 15 minus 5x. And here's something that actually is not in your standards. Rational or fractional functions are not in Algebra 2 standards anymore. They're not. They pulled them 2 years ago. I'm going to clear the fraction, multiply both sides by 2x minus 3 because it was hard for kids to understand fractions. It was. I'm clearing the fraction. 0 equals 15 minus 5x. 5x equals 15. And the x value is 3. So on the x-axis, there's my x-intercept. All right. My y-intercept happens when x is 0. So y would be 15 minus 5 times 0 over 2 times 0 minus 3. That's going to be 15 over negative 3, which is negative 5. All right, so what do we have here? We have 0, negative 5, and we have 3, 0. So you can do lots and lots of different things. You can do Pythagorean theorem. You can do distance formula. Obviously, I'll show them both. The distance would be the hypotenuse on this triangle, and it is 3 and negative 5. Doesn't really matter. It's 3 and negative 5. And this would be c. So 3 squared plus a negative 5 squared is c squared. That's 9 plus 25, which is going to be root 34, which is really close to 6. So it's going to be choice E. Okay, other things I can do. I need, forgive me, I'm just losing my train of thought here. I could have done distance formula. Distance is the square root of x minus x quantity squared plus y minus y quantity squared. So x minus x would be 3 minus 0 squared plus 0 minus a negative 5. And you can see that I'm going to get the exact same thing. All right? Now, I did this the old school way. You had a calculator. You could have just glanced at the graph to get those y-intercepts. Let's see, math, num, n over d. What was it, 15 minus 5x? Yeah, 15 minus 5x. And that's sitting over 2x minus 3. Whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. We'll zoom 6 it. There's your y-intercept, there's your x-intercept. It'd be cool if there was a way to find the distance between 2 points on a TI-84, but it just doesn't exist. Oddly enough, it can do derivatives and integrals, but it cannot find the distance between 2 points. You would think it would, but it doesn't. So you just got to do, distance formula. All right, what values of x satisfy the inequality? The absolute value of 2x minus 3 over 4 is greater than 1. So let's do this old school. We have two equations. 2x minus 3 over 4 is greater than 1, or negative 2x plus 3 over 4 is less than. Oh, I messed that up, didn't I? It's still greater than 1. Remember, on the second inequality, you change the sign of the stuff inside. You do not need to change the sign on the 4 because that would make it look like the original. Anywho, we're going to 4 both sides. That'll give us 2x minus 3 is greater than 4. We'll add 3. 2x is greater than 7. X is greater than 7/2. So you can see that right there. And they're hoping, and they're literally hoping, kids forget the second equation because 2 out of 3 do. 2 out of 3 kids forget the second equation. Anyways, 4 both sides, cancellation. Negative 2x plus 3 is greater than 4. We subtract 3, negative 2x is greater than 1. We divide by a negative 2, and we flip when we divide by a negative, right? So x is less than negative 1/2. There she is, choice C. Now, you are holding a TI-84 in this contest. You can go to Math. You can go to Num, ABS, Math, Num, N over D, type in the fraction. We'll do a zoom 6. If you want to use a TI-84, you still have to have conceptual knowledge. And the conceptual knowledge is that the greater than symbol means above. Where is this above y equals 1? Where is it above y equals 1? So that happens here, moving left, second trace, 5, enter, 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 and there's our negative 1/2. So from negative infinity to negative 1/2, they're using intervals. And that happens over here, and you see they've probably got some of the other choices of distractors. Enter, 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 and from 3.5, which is 7/2, to the right. So along that path. All right, number 12, what is the value of g of f of 1 if f of x is this and g of x is that? So this is equivalent to g composed of f of 1. We're going to plug a 1 in and plug the result back. It kind of works like that, work left to right. All right, so let's find f of 1. It is 3 over 1 minus 3, which is 3 over negative 2, which is negative 3/2. You guys probably like decimals because you're funny like that. So now we're going to find g of negative 3/2, and that's going to be 3 over negative 3/2, which is going to be 3 times negative 2 over 3, which is negative 2. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Some of you guys want to go into STEM fields and you keep wanting to do nothing but push buttons. You're not going to be a STEM major. You've got to hurry up and develop your number sense. I mean that. You've got to develop patterns and number sense. It's important in those fields. The vertical asymptote, again, this is something that's not in Algebra 2 standards. It doesn't exist anymore in Algebra 2 standards in Tennessee. But the vertical asymptote happens when you attempt to divide by 0. That's when it happens. So that happens in the denominator. X minus 2 is nothing, x is 2. Now, the older calculators, like the 81s and the 82s and the 83s and the early 84s, you know, the stuff from my day, they actually, because of a glitch, were drawn. I don't feel like going to math, num, n over d on this one. Just going to use parentheses. These don't. The new ones do not draw them, but what you see is you'll see the graph fall to infinity at 2 and rise to infinity on the other side of it. And there is a vertical asymptote there. There's something that's not being crossed, and that's what it means to be an asymptote. You don't cross it. So that's how you find them. 14, which of the following is a recursive formula for the sequence, blah, blah, blah. And let's see, does it have a pattern? I believe it does have a pattern. The pattern is plus 11, right? So for a recursive arithmetic, the next term is always the previous term plus the common difference. Like that's how it is. Now, this is a math contest, so they did not use that form. They are trying to be little jerks, okay? They are using the n+1 term. So let's think about that. If I add 1 here, I add 1 there. So a sub n plus 1 is now a sub n plus the difference. And the difference is 11. That's it. They're actually talking about, when you say a sub n plus 1, you're talking about the next term. That's kind of how this is. That's worth, a sub n minus 1 is the previous term. A sub n is the current term. And a sub n plus 1 would be the next term. Kind of funny, huh? All right, 15, which of the following is an equation of a line perpendicular to 2x minus 3y equals 8 and passes to the point negative 6, 3? I will show you how to use a calculator on this, but it's better if you just go old school. Old school is to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We call that the point slope formula. First off, we need to find our slope. So we're going to take 2x minus 3y equal to 8. We're going to make it look like mx plus b. I know a lot of y'all want to do these kind of things in your head. You shouldn't. But whatever, you do you. I had to learn right around when I was your age that if I wanted to be almost perfect, because I can't be perfect, I had to start writing. I mean, I was guilty of all the same things y'all do. I didn't write. But then math started getting rougher, and it was time for me to learn how to write, because I couldn't make those silly mistakes anymore. But anyways, I divide out my negative 3, and I'll get 2/3 of x minus 8/3, and I don't care about that. I care about that. My slope is 2/3. My perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal, which is negative 3/2. All right, now let's take this. I'm going to stop at 16 on this one. I'm going to plug in y minus 3 equals negative 3/2 of x minus a negative 6, taking away a negatives addition. Y minus 3 equals negative 3/2 of x minus 18 over 2, which should be minus 9. And then I'm going to add 3. I get y equals negative 3/2 x minus 6. Now this doesn't look like these. These things are in STD form, standard form. And this is y equals mx plus b. So let's move this over. 3 over 2x plus y equals negative 6. And we'll clear the fraction by 2ing every single piece. That'll give us 3x plus 2y equals negative 12, which is choice B. Now, you can do this in a TI-84, but you can't use Zoom 6. To see things properly, we're going to do a Zoom square, which I don't even remember what number that is because I hardly ever use it, but you can use Zoom square. You also have to solve each equation for y because it's literally y equals. So our original equation is 2/3 of x.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Patty. How are you?
Fine. This goes with you to your testing, so that after testing is done, before you dismiss them, they each get one of these.
Okay, thank you.
This is from the Youth Coalition.
I'll give it to him. Thank you, Miss Patty.
Yes, sir.
Where was I? Oh, yeah. How do I So I'm gonna have to convert every answer choice in here into y equals mx plus b. You know, so I don't really want to write all this down right now. You probably should. But that's going to become -3. I'm going to divide by 2, and that's going to be 3/2, okay? If you take a -12 divided by 2, you have +6. And when I look, I need to do a zoom 5, which is square. And the perpendicular part means I'm looking for right angles. Those are not right angles. Now, are they? All right, so this will become -3 divided by 2, -3/2. And then we divide by 2 minus 6. And then zoom, square, 5. And this should look like a right angle because you're doing the squares in. And it does. So there's how you kind of cheat with a TI-84. The last one I can do, and then I've got to stop and clear my room because it's ACT day. What are the center and radius of the circle with the equation? I might do some more. I'll probably do 17. What are the center and radius of the circle with the equation x squared plus y squared plus 4x plus 6y equals 3? This is a very old technique called complete the square. It's over 6,000 years old. You have to know that the STD form of a circle is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. And this is a geometry standard. So it's still fair game on an Algebra 2 test because it is a geometry standard. You were supposed to do this in geometry. Doesn't mean you did, but you were supposed to. We're going to group our x's and leave some space. We're going to group our y's and we're going to leave some space. And we're going to leave that constant on the other side. Now, to complete the square, we look at b, and here b is 4, okay? We cut it in half and we get a 2, and we square that 2 and we get a 4. And we add that to both sides to maintain balance. Now we're going to pay attention to the b term on the y. b is 6. We're going to cut it in half. We're going to get 3. We're going to square that 3 and get a 9. And we're going to add it to both sides. Not too bad, huh? This will give us 16 on the right. This factors as x plus 2 quantity squared. This factors as y plus 3 quantity squared. Make sure you understand that's how that factors. If you don't understand that's how that factors, I should not have picked you. Now, should I? So, I'm going to line everything up with that. This tells me h is -2, k is -3, and this is r squared, so r is 4. So I'm looking for -2, -3, radius of 4. And the last one before I clear my room, what are all the zeros of f of x equals 3x cubed plus 4x squared minus 17x minus 6, given that x equals 2 is 0? Now, I'm really surprised that they did this because, like, it's not hard. By hand, it's a breeze. I don't know why I'm putting the x there. Like, you know how to do this by hand. You might even be faster at it by hand than you would be in a calculator. I think I am. What do I have left? I have 3x squared plus 10x plus 3 left. Takes a 3x and an x to form 3x squared. Takes a 3 and a 1 to form 3. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So my other two zeros are -1/3 and -3. So 2 is a 0, 3, and -1/3. Like, that's how long it takes to do it by hand. Now, obviously, you could do this. I'm really surprised that they have not been reworking these tests to kind of eliminate the y1, y2 aspect. And there you go. Like, you can clearly see what your 3 zeros are. It ain't that blasted hard. Yeah, I probably need to stop, but I really want to do this one, so. This is worth writing. You have not seen this, but here they are. We're even if f of x equals negative, sorry, f of x equals f of negative x. We're odd if f of negative x, sorry, I wrote that wrong, negative f of x equals f of negative x. Those are your two rules, your even and odd rules. Now, even is symmetry with y-axis. It's y-axis symmetry. And odd is origin. So this one actually does seem to have origin symmetry. Let's run through our test. F of negative x is going to be negative 3 times a negative x that is cubed plus 6 times a negative x. If we cube a negative, we stay negative. You need to do that first. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So 3x cubed minus 6x. That's f of negative x. It does not equal the original function. Those two are not equal, so it's not even, okay? Negative f of x is the next thing we're going to find. To find negative f of x, you simply wrap the entire original function in a negative symbol, and then you use the distributive property, and you get 3x cubed minus 6x. So it is odd, and odd is origin. So the function is odd, and it is symmetric with respect to the origin. There you go. This will never happen. All right, and I do need to stop because I got to get my room cleaned up for Dunlap so we can use it today. So there we go. That is 1 through